Israel's military is now in day 4 of its ground operation into Gaza. This is footage provided by Israel Defense Forces. IDF tanks and soldiers are reportedly advancing on Gaza City from the northwest, the northeast, and the east. Israel's aerial bombardment continues as well. Thousands of bombs have been dropped on targets since the start of Israel's war. Those airstrikes have killed thousands of Gazans, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. For more on this phase of the war, I'm joined by retired Major Glenn Ignazio. He's a former U.S. Special Operations Air Force commander. Glenn Ignazio, it's good to speak with you again.
Nice to be back with you. Thank you.
This second phase has been long anticipated. We saw the IDF tanks and the soldiers on the ground in Gaza approaching Gaza City. From your experience, what do you think this phase of the war will look like?
Well, this is where the intensity and the operations are definitely picking up a variety of different ways. Is that, as we mentioned before, they have to methodically move through the city because there is a lot of rubble, a lot of places for Hamas to hide. In fact, in the initial incursions, there was a tunnel that actually basically opened up and a bunch of Hamas fighters came out attacking the IDF. So that's the issue, is that this tunnel system is a spider web, and that's going to cause a lot of surprises for Israel. But as they move along and they also identify some of these zones where they have, weapons stored and other supplies stored, that's where the aerial bombardments come in. They're trying to knock out the command and control centers at any of these ammunition and rocket storage facilities. So it's a combination of the air and ground right now.
Just speak a little bit more about the tunnels, if you can, because I was at a briefing today, and a defense attaché for the Israeli embassy here was briefing us on their goals in this phase of the operation is to destroy what they call the terrorist infrastructure, and that includes the tunnel system. How do you even go about trying to take out something as intricate and as fortified and as complex as a subterranean tunnel system that they've had years, decades to prepare?
Yeah, it's very dangerous. A couple of reasons. I mean, we saw things like this in Vietnam. We actually saw these things in Afghanistan from the U.S. military operations. So because it's a spider web, it's really going to be difficult to know where is the roots and what are the facilities underneath. And so it's going to have to find somebody that's been there and knows that, or they're able to get intelligence of where the mapping of these tunnels are. Even then, it may not be accurate. But it's going to be very dangerous because, of course, you're underground. And as the IDF or any forces enter, you're not going to know which way to go. There could be booby traps. It's just an absolute chaotic space to go into. And like I said, you turn a corner and there could be somebody there waiting for you. So it's extremely dangerous. What I've noticed also is that there have been some bombardments that used very deep penetrating bombs. They're delayed so they can go deep underground before they explode. I've seen a couple of those drop. If you know what you're looking for, you can see them. So I've seen that, and secondary explosions, which means they've hit ammunition underneath. So it's a very chaotic, very dangerous, and they've had years to make this spider web of tunnels underneath Gaza and Gaza City.
So how do you approach that as a soldier or as a military command when there are 240, give or take, hostages, and many of them are believed to be in this tunnel network? How do you take out what is such an obvious tactical and strategic threat without running the risk, or do you just accept that you're running the risk of killing the people you've said you want to save?
Well, it's a combination. So first of all is, you've seen some of these complexes, or at least it's been shown by the IDF and other intelligence, that they've built these incredible complexes even underneath the hospitals. So you can't really bomb that. Otherwise, you're taking out the hospital unless you evacuate it. People are going to be harmed. But the same thing about the hostages, that they could be in the tunnels. It could be in other facilities. So literally, they're going to have to get into the tunnel and move through the tunnels step by step and clear each area. That's if they choose to do it. Again, it's very dangerous, but that's what special forces do, and that's what we call close quarter battle. It is very dangerous, and it's extremely dynamic. So they're literally going to go step by step through these tunnels if that's the tactic that they choose to get the hostages. The best thing that they can do is to find out exactly where the hostages are to the best of their knowledge and try to focus on that area. But like I said, it's a deadly and dangerous game that they have to really get into those tunnels and work out.
Yeah, the threat environment here, you talk about an irregular fighting force that's had more than a decade to sort of booby trap and entrench in this place with a subterranean tunnel network. So obviously the risk factors there are enormous. Until this start of what this phase of the war is, it has been bombardments essentially from the air. How does that continue now that there are ground forces moving in? Like, how does the air support and the bombardment phase work with the ground invasion?
That's one thing that the Israelis are very good at. It's something we're good at, and actually the Russians aren't. So you won't see that in Ukraine. Sorry to flash for that. But what you see here in Israel is the close air support is actually the definition of providing extremely close, detailed air support to the troops on the ground. So as the troops on the ground are encountering any type of resistance or snipers, et cetera, they're able to call in the aircraft on specific targets. So right now they're using intelligence, the aircraft, they're seeing the particular target areas of where maybe ammunition is stored. So that's a very upper level type of target. But when you get down to where the troops are moving through the city and they're actually encountering, they're able to identify the location and call an aircraft in a very, very surgical strike on a specific area. So that's how that interoperability and combined arms works. But the thing that you have to watch out for is, and tying back to the tunnels, is as they move through the city, they have to be very careful because, that tunnel system, somebody could pop out behind them and they have to be careful for that. So they're going to have to move through, yet occupy and keep the areas that they're in because, again, Hamas could pop out behind them. And that's very dangerous. It's a very dynamic environment they're really walking into.
So we've seen all the images coming out of Gaza of the destruction to the infrastructure. And I've seen this described by military experts that essentially this is Israel shaping the battlefield, taking out certain buildings and taking out certain entrenched positions to sort of like flatten the area so they have a clearer path going in. But other experts we've had on the show, and sort of the description you've mentioned there on the surgical strikes, is that once the troops start moving in and running into secondary positions, we're going to see a whole lot more of that infrastructure in Gaza just get flattened and leveled. Like, we should brace ourselves for some pretty gruesome stuff in the next little while.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this whole thing, if you look at the information warfare, Israel's really sort of losing compared to Hamas's game. In fact, Hamas laid out probably 20 to 30 people underneath blankets today saying that they were dead, but the problem is they were moving. So they're playing that game very well. Israel is not. And so that's what's being blasted around the world. And so talking to exactly what you're mentioning is as they move into the battle area and they find these areas where command and control, they're going to take them out. So yeah, what the term is preparing the battlefield. It's to minimize the resistance of the ground troops. They're basically the open, most vulnerable force you have because they're out there walking through the streets. So you want to take out these sites so they have the least amount of resistance possible. But you are talking about artillery, tanks, and heavy weapons and bombs, which causes destruction. The other thing is that rubble does give a lot of hiding points for Hamas and a lot of booby traps. So as you said, you may take out big threats, but you might be opening up a lot more little threats to worry about.
So we got about 90 seconds or so, Glenn. And the stated goal of this is to take out Hamas and to remove it as a threat to the security of Israel. History is littered with regular forces trying to take out militias and it not going very well. How achievable is this for the IDF to eliminate Hamas here?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, and it's a challenging one because, again, Hamas and the terrorists, asymmetric, they look just like civilians. So who's who? It's basically a person with a weapon. So to be able to identify who Hamas is, they're going to have to use a lot of history and a lot of intelligence, what we call human intelligence of all these people. The one thing Hamas did was they filmed everything that they did when they went into Israel. So they have a lot of facial recognition of individuals that have been causing these particular terror acts. So they're going to be looking for that. But like I said, it is very difficult to identify who is friend or foe, and that's what makes it very dangerous. The other thing is you're taking out the terrorists today, but with all this harm, you're also creating terrorists tomorrow. So that's something Israel's going to have to think about for the years to come, not just today.
And any kind of an operation, if they stick with this stated strategic goal, it's going to take months and months and months, right? This will be long.
Yes, it is, and it is going to be a tough battle. It's not like a big fighting force is going to be wiping out a small one. It is going to be very methodical, and it's going to be very dangerous, and it's going to be very deadly, and unfortunately, I believe on both sides. So you're absolutely right. There is no easy way out in this situation.
Retired Major Glenn Ignazio, with the formerly with the U.S. Special Operations Air Force as a commander there. Thank you so much, sir, for your time tonight.
Thank you. Nice seeing you again.